It feels really weird to be recording after not doing anything for 4 weeks. Sometimes you feel like you don't have permission to change online.
Do you feel like when you show up on the vlog, is there a feeling of performance?
You know what's actually so funny?
Yeah.
I actually haven't told the internet this ever.
I could have never guessed that that was what you were going to say.
Hello. Welcome. I am 4 out of the 6 weeks into my break right now. And it does feel a little bit like I'm cheating myself by filming this in the middle of my break. But also this was always the plan. Because for me, what we're about to do feels like part of my mental homework for myself that I am trying to take a month to like just really fully explore my relationship with myself and my work and my perception of myself. And so doing this is part of that journey. So it doesn't actually really feel like work right now, because also I have one of my best friends here that she flew in. Everybody, this is Elise. Elise is so wise and mature and a great question asker and listener. And I feel like you are like 4 steps down the self-care boundary people pleaser journey that I am also going on. And so you're like my guide.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So
I don't feel it.
Oh no, you're my I've always been the big sister and you're my big sister.
Oh,
So
cute.
here we are. I guess I should explain exactly what my goal is here. I mentioned in the video a while ago, it was a chat with Jordy. I forget if it was either like a sick day chat I had with Jordy or we did like an assumptions video where we reacted to people's assumptions. And I had said in that video that like something that I haven't figured out with being online in my relationship with the internet is I haven't figured out what sounds like healthier and more freeing. I haven't decided if it is full sending and like giving zero shits and just like completely unfiltering myself, saying everything I think and feel, not worrying about how it's perceived, just being like 100% honest all the time. And if that feels like, oh, I would finally be free if I lived that way, or if it sounds more freeing to be like, you know what? I have my life, that's my life. And then I have my work and I have more boundaries. And like these things I'll share, but these things I'm going to keep private. And like trying to value privacy for once in my life, because I've also just never valued that at all. And if like having stricter boundaries and sharing less of myself actually sounds more freeing. And I said in that video that I know health is probably somewhere in between those two, but my brain really feels like the solution has to be one of the extremes, which it probably isn't. But after my month off, I was kind of like, okay, what if as part of the journey of figuring out where I want to fall is just full sending when I come back, the first 2 videos being like, let's try the extreme where I just share everything completely unfiltered. And I do it with people that in my real life, I already feel unfiltered with, which is you and Jordy.
Yeah.
Because then it's like that side of me to where I'm just like saying what I feel, saying what I think, and not really thinking about it as something that's going on the internet, but just more of like a conversation, posting it. And then after it's live, being like, does that feel more freeing? Do I feel more like myself? And if I don't, who knows? Maybe I'll just swing the other way and be like, all right, let's try privacy for once.
Yeah, I have a question about that.
Hit me.
Okay. When I met you, I was like, you are one of the most open people I've met. Like you immediately just like tell so much. You don't have shame about like who you are or what you do or what you like or anything. Like it's all, you're just like able to be like, hey, this is who I am. And these are my quirks. And you're just like very open. And I wonder, well, does that feel true? First off.
Yeah, I think I realized at a young age that when you say something about yourself, and it's hard to not be almost self-deprecating with it, but like when you are like, oh yeah, like I do this, I have this weird thing about me, my body does this weird thing, whatever, then the ownership you have over it never makes you feel embarrassed about it.
It's amazing.
But when you like kind of like hide something and you're like, oh, I hope this doesn't come up, then like you kind of like build this embarrassment beneath the surface.
Yes.
And it's probably also just being like a theater kid. You know, you're just like, you grow up in a culture of other kids that are like, I am so extra. And it's like, theater kids are annoying, but they are shameless. And so I do think I adopted that young. And it probably is from me not wanting to feel embarrassment.
That's awesome. Because
Thanks.
I feel like I was the opposite in like, I didn't want to feel embarrassment. So I put layers and layers of like, I want everyone to think I'm perfect and I don't do anything weird or I don't do anything this or that. Like very, very, I only wanted to come across like very perfect.
Totally.
And so I feel like I did the opposite so that I wouldn't feel embarrassment. But then it's just shame. Like I just was like filled with shame of who I actually am.
That makes sense. I feel like I have like two separate categories. I have the side of me that is like, I genuinely do not care if anybody thinks I'm ugly or weird or doesn't like my style or doesn't like those things of me. But I care so deeply what people think about my character. And if my character is misinterpreted and if I seem mean or rude accidentally. And so that side of me is like hyper aware of trying to be as perfect as possible with the way that I'm coming across person to person.
Which is why this conversation is so pertinent.
Which is why I have accidentally gotten myself into some toxic things with my work and the way I'm perceived as a person, as a spirit, like my core.
Yeah.
Say what you want about my outside. People call me too skinny, too fat, too whatever every single day. And like genuinely never once has it hurt my feelings. But if somebody is like, the way you said that made me sad, I think about that and I marinate on that and I ruminate on that for like that devastates me. Devastates me. And so like I don't know, that's so opposite.
That makes so much sense though, because I feel like there are like a couple things in my life that I don't think I will forget ever because they're things where like someone perceived me as being mean or bad or like unkind or ignorant or whatever. And I like, it's so hard not to think about it constantly.
So hard.
And be so sad about it.
So hard.
So that makes so much sense. And you have that all the time.
It's so ingrained. Obviously, when you share your life with the internet, you have so many more people than just your like day-to-day life that are able to feel hurt by what you said. There's so many more people that have like lived an experience in a life that you don't know about them. So you're constantly trying to put yourself in the shoes of these people that you haven't met, being like, I don't know their life experiences. And if I say something, could it be misinterpreted by someone that I've never met? And I don't know what their personal traumas are or what their biases are. And that's like, it's impossible. You can't be held responsible for the way someone else reacts to something, but like you do feel the weight of that responsibility.
Yeah. It must feel like self-editing 24/7.
That is why I was so excited to see what it felt like to live offline for a bit because of the self-editing that happens when you are filming yourself with like that mindset. I realize my brain continuously is just perceiving myself the way I'm going to be perceived. And that weight of perception is so heavy that it's almost like so many tabs are open in the browser of my brain that it's like lag. And I'm just never fully with myself. If that makes sense. I think one reason why I have been nervous to talk about the things that I struggle with myself and my work and like all the things is because I literally cannot think of a more privileged job. Like people are like working manual labor jobs to have food on the table. And like influencers are like, yeah, I have to like review this like piece of clothes. And like I am so aware of the way it seems.
Totally.
And I'm just like, I feel like the more privileged a job is, the less room you ever have to say that anything about it is hard. You know what I mean?
Yes. I think that is like in life in general. Like I feel like emotional hardship comes in so many different ways.
Yeah. Even if you're not a creator, we're all living on the internet.
Yeah.
And we are relearning how to communicate with other humans through this whole new medium that didn't exist 20 years ago. And it's like most of our connections are happening through a screen. And we're all learning like, oh, wow, mentally, I'm affected when I scroll because of these things. Mentally, I am self-conscious when I post an Instagram story, even if it's to my like 100 friends because of these things. Like I do try to remind myself that it's okay for me to like struggle and like assess the health of some of the things I'm doing and how that affects me, because we all are doing it, whether it's our job or not. And so I hope that makes it okay for me to be like, I'm going to take a step back for a month.
Yeah.
I do feel like, come on, you don't need to take a step back for a month. You have the easiest, most fun job in the world. But I remind myself that to feel less guilty, I guess, about what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And it is very incredible and like the coolest job ever. And I love it. But also, I just started a corporate job for the first time in my whole life. And I've like done creative things for most of my life. It comes with its own stuff. It's hard in its own ways. To be like, I just come and I work, and it's not like I'm putting my soul out to the world every single day.
Yeah.
It's like I'm doing stuff, and like sometimes people are like, that wasn't as good as it should have been. But like, that's it. It's not like who you are or the art you create or whatever you have created isn't good.
Yeah.
That hurts a lot more.
Yeah. Or showing up and being like, I have to think of something new to do today.
Yeah.
And it's on me to think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it's a different type of like labor, mental labor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. So just give us a quick overview of like what it's felt like being offline. Do you feel like there have been changes in how you feel, how your brain feels, how your emotions feel, how you're showing up in person?
Yeah.
With the people around you? Like, has that changed? Anyway, just give us a like overview of all of that.
Yeah. First, I thought like, so I'm not just not creating, but I'm not consuming. Like I've deleted every social media app besides Pinterest. Which
we love Pinterest.
I have been scrolling a lot of Pinterest.
Isn't it?
It's so
I
amazing.
have also deleted all apps except for Pinterest.
Interesting.
And then I scroll it all the time. And I'm like, well, is this just as bad?
I know. I'm like, I don't know any of these people. It's just vision boarding.
It is vision boarding and I love it. Okay, sorry, keep going.
So I was like, I wonder if I'm going to have like withdrawals, because it's so almost like muscle memory of just you're in public and you're standing and you're like, well, I don't want to like just stare at the person in front of me in line. So I'm going to open Instagram.
Yeah. At a stoplight.
Literally.
I do that. Yes.
And so I was like prepared for the withdrawals from the consumer part. Zero. Like I don't miss it at all, which is shocking. A couple times someone will be like, oh yeah, I posted this like life event. And I'm like, oh, I have a little bit of FOMO that like I wanted to like one of my friends just got her dream job. She's like, yeah, I announced it on Instagram. And I'm like, man, I mostly feel like sad that I couldn't hype you up in the comments, but also I'm here with you right now. So I can hype you up in real life. So it doesn't matter. But that's the only little amount of FOMO I felt, but I have felt no withdrawals, which is crazy. My brain feels like it took a deep breath. Yeah. It's not like a ping pong ball, like just. So that was interesting. But honestly, even more so, it is so peaceful to wake up in the morning and know that nothing out of my control is going to ruin my day. I mean, yeah, something still could. I could get in a car accident. I could, stub my toe. I could whatever. But I am very used to not knowing when I open my DMs or my comments, if somebody's going to say something to me that will just like hurt my heart so deeply. And it's just always, it feels kind of like a landmine of like, I want to get in there and respond and like see and like be aware of the feedback or whatever from all these people that are like awesome and care and support me. And like, I feel like are my community. I call them my online friends because I genuinely do feel that way.
Yeah. But
as it goes with the internet, for every 20 of those messages, there's going to be something that's like really hurtful. And it's just been really fascinating to like experience the peace my brain feels of like, oh, it's not even an option to like accidentally stumble into those messages that people send me sometimes. And my heart is just stable. Yeah. And that is crazy. That's probably the biggest thing. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, my therapist has told me, she's like our first session, I was offline for 2 weeks. She was like, you feel very like present, like grounded is the word she used. And I was like, well, normally I'm not going to lie. Therapy is an hour, sometimes longer. And by the 20-minute point, I'm going, okay, well, I need to be doing this thing. And I can't forget this. And I have to send this edit as soon as I'm done. And I didn't film this thing before therapy. And is the lighting going to be okay after therapy? It's just work. Like, I think that's probably just what anybody feels with their workday.
For sure.
And so it has been nice that the conversations I've had, people are like, they can tell that I'm like a more active listener, I think. Wow. Instead of my brain just being like thinking through the next 30 things, or man, I need to film a vlog tomorrow and the sponsor told me that there's a view guarantee. So I need to make sure I get this many views, but I don't really have anything interesting going on in my life right now. And I want to share something that's like valuable, but like, how do I make sure it performs well for the brand without it being like too annoyingly clicky for the audience? Like my brain is doing stuff like that, like all the time.
I'm thinking about this in like terms of my job, where there is a lot of that. Like my job, I'm an executive assistant. So my job is to like keep everything organized, make sure I don't miss anything, make sure that each of my bosses has everything that they need for everything. It is a lot of remembering all those things. But the nice part about it is at 5 p.m., I close my laptop and I'll still have those thoughts, but I'll just be like, oh, I'm not working right now.
That's for tomorrow.
That can happen at 9 a.m. tomorrow. The hard part about being a creator is there's no on-off switch. It's you and it's your life. And it's like you are the center of the thing, which is really exciting and cool.
Yeah.
And also that's something that's really hard.
Yeah. It's also something, speaking of like being the center of the thing, that I talk about with Jordy too, is like he's obviously a creative and he has some of those same struggles. But the interesting thing about his work versus my work is he's creating a consumable product that, yes, comes from him, but is separate from him. People can hear a song and have no idea anything about him. Whereas me, it's only me.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying like, hey, I created this book for you to read. Yeah. Separate from me. It's literally like, do you want to hang out with me? Do you like me enough to spend time with me?
Wow.
Do you like my life and what I'm doing right now? Or do you hate it? You know, it's like, it is just me.
Wow. And that is crazy because I know that we've had the conversation before of like your videos do really well when things are not going super well in your life.
Yeah.
Right. So that has to be like really hard for your brain to comprehend. Like, okay, so all these people, when it is like, hey, do you guys want to hang out with me?
Yeah.
That's your thing. But it's like, then, oh, do you only want to hang out with me when things are going bad? So you don't want to celebrate me. So like, that's really got to be tricky for your brain to put together.
It's hard. And I know it's like individual people watching it. A lot of people have told me like, no, like I have so much more peace watching you in this healthy season, but the algorithm's different from the individual people.
Yes.
And the algorithm, unfortunately, is what pays you. It's like the views you get is how many times the ad breaks are seen, is how many times YouTube pays you. And a lot of the people watching things might not be your normal viewers, but like when you go through something really traumatic, the algorithm loves that. And that is great for your business.
Yeah.
And so it's almost hard, like mentally separating the core audience, the people that care about me are happy for me versus like the algorithm and the numbers are totally different. And that affects my income and that affects my business and that affects the brands I want to work with.
Yeah.
It's like the community versus the business are like two opposite sides of the spectrum.
That's really interesting.
Whenever I'm nervous about something bad happening, there's a part of my brain that goes, well, if that did happen, though, your job would be so much easier. Oh. And people would be a lot nicer to you on the internet.
You don't choose those thoughts and feelings. It's like that is a piece of your subconscious that exists because this has been what you've been doing for so long.
Yeah. It's like I've been conditioned to believe some things. I've been conditioned to believe a lot of things. And like that's something that I also think is interesting to talk about that we can like dive into a bit is the fact that I started my YouTube channel at 18.
Yeah.
As such an impressionable little child. And at that time, so much had changed in my life. I had just moved to LA. I had just, I forget if the YouTube channel came a little bit before I got into that relationship that turned into my first marriage.
Yeah.
All of these things happened at the same time. So I was building a ton of new habits at the same time that I was sharing my life online. And so a lot of those like unhealthy things that my brain was conditioned to do coincided. And so a trauma or a trigger over here would affect how I felt about a comment on the internet. Sometimes you feel like you don't have permission to change online.
Oh, man, for sure.
And I'm such a different person than I was at 18.
Yeah.
Like, I'm such a different person. And I would hope to be. Like, no one wants to be who they were at 18.
Yes.
But it's also like at 18, I was like this, I don't know, newly moved from Texas, like going out for Disney Channel auditions. Like, that just sums it up right there.
That's so cute.
You know, like that sums it up right there.
Yeah.
Of just like, oh yeah, everything's great. Like pretty like toxic positivity too.
Yeah, same. Me at 18 as well.
Literally. I mean, that's most of us. But I feel like it has been weird to like give myself permission to evolve on the internet. I feel like I've evolved so much more as a human than I have as my like person on the internet. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Because the people like you for what they perceive you to be. And that is what you're selling.
Yeah.
But also if you never evolve, then you become so stale. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think like us as people like predictability.
Yes.
So when someone starts to change or be different or like evolve, you're like, whoa, wait, that's not, we're used to this thing. Even if the like evolved version is more authentic, healthier, happier, all of those things, it's like, it just, I think is hard for us as humans to grasp. And then you put it on the internet and it's like, we want the people on the internet to be flawless. We want them to be perfect. We want them to like not feel real.
Or at least fall into the generalized boxes you put them into. Like I'm trying to think of creators that I know that it's like, oh, it's like Trisha Paytas. I don't know. I don't really keep up with her, but I don't expect her to be perfect. I expect her to be like a little unhinged. And like that is the box I put her in.
You expect her to be who she's shown you to be.
Yes.
Do you feel like when you show up on the vlog, is there a feeling of performance? Like, is there an element of like, okay, now I put on like vlog Michel?
It's interesting because the few times I've like vlogged around friends, they're like, how do you just like do that so naturally? Like you were just talking to me and then you're talking to the vlog the exact same way that you were talking to me.
I agree.
And I always take that as a super high compliment. So I think that I'm like, I don't have a different like personality, but my brain goes into this like hyper filtered thing. We were talking about this earlier and I was like, I realized that what I'm doing is I'm translating everything I'm genuinely thinking and feeling. Like I am trying to be as genuine as possible, but almost into like corporate Michel. Because at the end of the day, it is a job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a business and I'm representing brands and I'm doing that thing we were talking about earlier where I'm trying to just like take into consideration everything I'm saying, how I'm saying it, how it can be perceived to like mitigate the risk as much as possible. Damage control as I'm saying it of like, is my tone and my inflection correct? Is every word that I'm using politically correct? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. As I'm speaking. So it's like very diluted, watered down, distilled. Yeah. But it's still me. I don't feel like I'm like putting on a persona, but I am just, my brain just goes into like hyperactive overdrive.
Yes. Yes. There's this thing in like intuitive eating, like health at every size type of world that it's called self-objectification.
Ooh, tell me about it.
And they talk about like when you are constantly doing basically this, but with your physical body, but like being like, how are people perceiving me? What do I look like when I'm doing this? How do I move when I'm doing this? Versus actually being in your body and just like experiencing it in your body. You're thinking about how you're experiencing it or how someone would see you experience it. Isn't that interesting? That was like a huge turning point for me when I was like, oh, I am doing that. Versus now I'm like, I can't even like, that doesn't even cross my mind. Anyway.
Interesting.
So interesting.
Even something as innocent as my mom and I got matching, or we went to go get pedicures together when I was in Texas and I vlogged it. And I thought that the people doing her nails were like the sweetest people ever. They were married, they were husband and wife. And I was just so like warmed by it to see a couple working together and like being so sweet to each other. So I shared some of the exchange with the vlog. And I was like, the husband would be like, oh, you got my nail polish for me? That's so nice. Thank you. And like, just like watching them interact in like a working capacity, I thought was so sweet. And I shared that and didn't even consider. This is why I always try to consider every single thing I'm saying through the lens of every single type of person that could be listening to me say it. I had this one person comment and it was very sweet and well-intended, which is why I hate that I hurt her feelings. And she said, as a Vietnamese viewer, I felt really hurt by the accent that you were doing when you explained that story. And immediately I was like devastated because I didn't even consider that, because the people doing my nails were white and Hispanic. And obviously, like, if they had an accent in any type of accent, I would be hyper aware of like how I said what they said to me to make sure that it did not seem like I was ever mocking someone's accent.
Yeah.
But they were native San Antonio people, like the types of people that I grew up with had the exact same accent and dialect as me. And so I didn't even consider that. And I was like, it started to get some traction in my comments, and people started to be like, oh yeah, not the accent, come on. And I was like, I don't know. I texted my manager. I was like, what do I do? And she's like, honestly, I would just like edit that part out of the video, because you don't want other people to like take it out of context and feel hurt by it as well. And so I apologized. And I think I told her, like, I really didn't even consider that because one was white, one was Hispanic. You were with me. I was like, I was kind of shaken up by it, because I was like, I hate the fact that I made this subsect of people feel like I could be racist towards them.
Yeah.
And that was never my intent, because it wasn't the reality. It wasn't what happened. That my brain is always trying to scan for those types of situations to make sure I don't hurt anybody's feelings. And it's impossible, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know how things could be perceived, and you don't know what holes people can fill in based on their own lived experiences. Like, she probably has experienced a lot of racism in that context in her own life.
For sure.
And so she's filling in holes with what she knows to be true. And it's different from what I would fill in the holes from what I know to be true. And it changes the context of the narrative completely.
Yeah.
And it's just impossible to predict all those things, but I try my hardest. And it's just constant in my brain. Constant.
Yeah. Well, and then it's like we'll just take it out of the video is like literally editing it out. And then it's like, oh, I wonder if there's a part of you that is like, that feels like editing you, not editing a video. Because again, what you're putting out is you and your experiences, your life, your people, your personality, etc.
It's true. But at the end of the day too, like, I am a person, but I'm also essentially, I am a product.
Yeah.
Like, there is companies put a dollar value on me as a product.
Wow.
To represent them the way that they hope to be represented. And so if I was a good little girl and like a smart businesswoman in terms of keeping companies happy, I wouldn't be doing this chat right now. I would keep things like very surface level, very just like, oh no, everything's great. Look, my house is so clean. Let's make dinner. Let's, but I'm kind of sick of that. Like, I don't want to put a emphasis on like how profitable I can be for companies, if that means sacrificing who I am as a person, or if that means like feeling the need to like really water myself down. And so that's why I want to try. That's why I want to try to just be like,
yeah,
this is me.
Yeah. So what kind of led you to that feeling, idea, finally like being like, oh, I want things to be different? And do you feel like this break has solidified that for you? Or how do you feel after or in the midst of your break about that?
Well, we are nearing 10 years of me sharing myself on the internet.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I've done a good job of being vulnerable. That's something I really strive to do. But I feel like I've done a really bad job of showing my like goofy, silly side.
Oh.
Because that feels riskier.
That feels probably vulnerable.
It feels like it could be taken out of context if you don't feel like serious all the time. Like I have realized that there's a huge safety in being like, I've really thought through this and I'm going to share this thing that's really hard. And I'm thoughtful, I'm mindful, I'm considerate. But if I'm just like having a good time and I'm silly and goofy, then it's a more dangerous way to be perceived because people think you are not being mindful and thoughtful and considerate. Does that make sense?
Totally. Okay, this is so interesting. I was just listening to a podcast about this.
Really?
It was about joy. And this man who wrote this book, and I wish I could remember his name, but he wrote a book all about joy. And they were talking about how a lot of people will feel that way. Like will feel that it's like mindless or not important, or how could you be joyful and happy when there's all of these horrible things happening in the world and whatever. And they were just talking about like, this is the most important thing in the world. Like this is the most serious thing, is to be joyful and to find joy and gratitude and all of these things. Anyway, it was such an incredible conversation, but it was so interesting. He talks about like the correlation between like being alive and dying. And the more that you like accept like that you're going to die and all of these things, the more you're able to have joy and live like with that. And so really what you're doing is facing the harshest realities when you are finding that joy and gratitude.
Interesting.
Right? But that we don't value that as a society.
Yeah. Well, then it's like the same thing. You almost assume that joy is like inauthentic. And pain and sorrow is authentic. And that's why toxic positivity is such a thing that I'm like, oh no, I don't want to be that, because I have been that and been perceived as that, probably accurately. Yeah. Because for a very long time, I just did not allow myself to feel feelings because it wasn't safe for me to feel feelings because I was in an unsafe environment. So it's just it's so weird to figure out like where to fall on that spectrum. I do feel like now that I am in safety and in like a healthy marriage and like out of a environment where I was so suppressed, I have like regained my silliness and my goofiness and my joyfulness, but I don't know how to share it in a way that is like safe for me to do so, to where I don't get shit on. Yeah. Because that would then ruin it again. It would take it away again if I was like, I
become unsafe again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then not seem inauthentic and like toxic in terms of positivity. I don't know. And this is me yet again being like, how am I being perceived right now? Yeah. But it is either being rewarded or it's being punished based off the feedback that I get, which is why my brain has been trained to do these things.
I feel like finding that like silly, like almost like childlike joy is so hard to re-find
as an adult.
It is like the most precious and sacred thing when I feel that. Like it'll come out and I am like, oh,
there she is.
Yes, she lives. She's in there. Like she exists in there. Honestly, I feel like I value that in our friendship.
Totally.
I feel like it's a friendship where I'm like, we can be silly, goofy, and it feels amazing. There's no like judgment or like, oh, you're being weird or whatever. It's amazing. But I feel like in finding that in a space like this, is really tricky because, if you get that negative feedback, that could feel really damaging to what you've worked really, really, really hard to find again.
Exactly. Yeah. It all just comes down to that same thing of feeling like you're kind of like walking through a minefield of like, I want to interact and I want to be here, but I don't know which thing is going to like blow up in my face and like set me back and like devastate me. And I don't know how to not feel empathy. It's like you almost have to like put up walls, but I don't want to have walls up.
Maybe you're not putting walls up to keep people out, but you're putting walls up to keep yourself in and safe.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like people can't come into your safety bubble.
Yeah.
You can put yourself out there and you can do that and people can have their feelings, but they'll just bounce right off of the boundary.
Yeah. That's ideal. Almost like tears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are all these like stories that we have in our head that if someone like hits it, you're automatically like your assumption is, oh, that's probably true.
Yeah.
Not like, no, they don't know me. And that actually isn't true to who I am. Like, you are the kindest person that I know. Like, literally, I have been trying to make adult relationships for my whole adult life. Like, since I moved to Nashville at 23? And it has been near impossible. Like, it is so hard. And I feel like I met you 1 or 2 times and I was like, okay, well, perfect. I literally love you. Aww. But you're so welcoming and inviting and kind and caring and thoughtful. Like, it wouldn't even cross my mind for you to be mean in any way.
Thank you.
Yeah. But isn't that sad that your brain doesn't believe that?
It is weird that we almost can see other people more clearly than we can see ourselves. When you're looking at yourself, you are too close. And it's almost like looking at a painting from here. And it's like you can see all the little pin strokes of the painting, but you don't really, you can't grasp the full picture of what it is. And then when you can take a step back away from it and see the full painting, you're like, oh, clearly this is what this is. And it's like you have better perspective on someone, I think, when you're a step away instead of like in your own mind and in your own psyche and just being like every single little thing I'm just assessing all the time. I don't know.
Wow, that's such an interesting idea. And I just had the thought of like, what if I could step back from myself, but not as an observer, like not as like from outside of me, but maybe like above me, like looking at my inside self and being like, who am I at my very truest core?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that person's pretty cool.
That person is the coolest person ever.
I really love her.
And I think that is beautiful to be able to like see.
Yeah. But when I'm inside my body, because I have all of these parts that are like hurt and have beliefs that are untrue, it's hard to feel that way. But I feel like if I can like just step up and look in and be like, oh, she's not too bad, actually. She's okay.
She's great. Yeah. She's trying her best and doing her best, and her best is really great.
Like really pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote down some little things that I guess have like hurt me on the internet.
Yeah.
And when we were, talking through what I want this to be, I was like, I do want to be so intentional that this conversation isn't me shitting on the internet.
Yeah.
Because this is my dream job. It's like amazing. So I do want to make sure that like me talking about these things that have been hard for me is not me being ungrateful, is not me being like, I don't like this. And also, most importantly, is me talking to the like 99% of people watching this that are so supportive and kind and awesome, and almost being like an apology and me saying, I am so sorry that I let these little things make me want to close myself off. Because that's not fair to you, because you've been nothing but like nice and cool and normal to me. And there is like 1% of people that are not nice, cool, and normal that really hurt me and make me feel unsafe, that make me want to close myself off to the other 99%. And that is so not fair. And I'm so sorry that I'm ever even tempted to do that. You know what I mean? A few of those things is like, I think I've like reassessed my privacy a lot for literal physical safety reasons. Like something that I haven't talked about that I think is interesting to talk about is every single home that I've lived in the last 4 or 5 years, my address has been doxxed. And then I'm
crazy.
Like, so people can just show up at my house?
Yeah.
Like that has made me feel so unsafe. Like even buying this house, I knew, okay, if I'm going to buy this house, we're going to probably be here for a long time. I'm going to take as many precautions as I can before I even mention that we bought a house. And I did. I had the real estate agents remove every listing photo possible. I contacted individual like secondary listing websites on the phone, over email, and said, can you remove all these listing photos? I did everything I possibly could. I had to threaten legal action against some sites that refused to remove the photos before I even announced that I bought a house and waited for them to remove it.
Wow.
And then I did all that. And obviously I'm like so overjoyed to share this big news of like, we bought a house. I posted a house inside the kitchen, made sure to not post anything outside, literally us at the kitchen counter. And within a couple seconds, I get a comment that says, LOL girl, you just doxed yourself, because people were able to cross-reference archived photos that had the same light pendant that was seen in mine, based off of like being able to search listing information about the size, location, closing date, like all these. I'm like, I didn't dox myself. People went through so many hoops to figure out. And then I had some well-intended people also be like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah street. I know that house, in my comments, like listing my actual address in my comments. And just like little things like that. I'm like, wow, I assume that people act the same way as me.
Yeah.
I assume that like I wouldn't go try to find someone's address and then post it.
Yeah.
And so then I start to second guess of like, oh, people don't like have the same thought process as me about these things.
Yeah.
And do I need to like have so much more privacy?
Well, again, it's the mental gymnastics.
Yes.
Like, it's like, again, it's not just you doing your job. You don't just do your job. If you were just doing your job, that's your dream job. That's amazing. But what comes along with it is this, like, if I were to buy a house, I would literally, I don't even, half the things you just said, I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing or a possibility or anything.
Yeah.
Us people who don't do what you do, don't do that.
Yeah.
We buy a house and it's already stressful enough to buy a house.
Yeah.
Put on top of that, it's the mental load. It's like you're carrying that, but for the entirety of your life, not just like in a relationship or in a job. It's like, no, it's your whole life, because buying a house shouldn't be part of your work.
It's so true. Yeah. When you phrase it like that way, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, this feels so permanent. I'm thinking about my future children and their safety, because I'm sure I'm going to like bring my first child home to this house. You know, it's actually so funny. I actually haven't told the internet this ever. I love these. My first apartment in Austin, my address was doxed. And when I moved out of the apartment, I did nomad life for a bit. I ended up moving into the same apartment, but into a newer wing. And I pretended like I had moved to a completely different area.
Awesome.
My sister was living in my apartment from the first unit I lived in to the second unit I lived in. And I was so hyper aware of my safety that I would phrase me visiting my sister as if I had to drive to go and see her, because I didn't want people to put together that I was still living in the same complex.
And like, how insane that again is, like, that is you like self-objectifying. Like, you have to think through you existing.
How I phrase things for the sake of safety.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like, I chose, like, there are so many privileged things about this job. The only thing that I have to sell is like that mental, emotional burden.
Yeah.
Because everything else is just so cool, great, awesome, fun.
Yeah.
Dream. You
also,
know?
like, you're still allowed to have feelings and something be hard. Even every single person in the entire world deserves that.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves to have emotions around the thing that is hard for them. Does it look the same as someone else? Maybe not. But it's still a feeling and it's still valid.
Yeah.
And it is hard, I think, for people to maybe see that or accept that. But I think that is like a basic human right. And if we're not allowing people to do that, even people who are successful, even people who are like, whatever, doing what they love, whatever it is, they also get that.
Yeah.
That is a basic human right, I think. At least it should be if it's not.
Yeah, you're right. You're so right about that. And you know what's been interesting?
Yeah.
Is being offline during the LA fires happening.
Yeah.
This has been a different tragedy for a lot of reasons. It hit so close to home.
Yeah.
I think my last home in Altadena is no longer standing. I don't know for sure. I keep checking the fire maps. I lived on a street called North Marengo Avenue, and that street is pretty much all gone in Altadena. And I can't tell if it stopped like a couple up from my house or if it went to that. Anyways, so it hit so close to home to know about these tragedies. We were housing friends from LA when these fires were happening. One of my friends was 9 months pregnant. We were housing her. So in a lot of ways, this like devastating thing like hit me so much harder than usual because it felt like, wow, that's my neighborhood that I lived in. Whenever a tragedy happens, what I want to do is be like, how can I help? Like I'm sad and I'm going to sit in my feelings about this. And like, I want to help the actual people. But what is required of me online is, where's your statement? You need to post something. You need to make sure it is worded appropriately to be helpful and to be like, the tone needs to be right. And there's been times where like I'm devastated by something and like being a human and like trying to process it. And then I get all these DMs of, why haven't you posted about this? Where's your statement? Like your silence is saying everything.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm trying to like wrap my mind around this thing that's happening just like everybody else is right now, because it is like earth shattering every time something big happens. But it's like, wow, I had the freedom to be a human and to like just sit in the feelings, and then also like have the capacity to reach out to all of my friends in LA instead of using that capacity, that mental capacity to like research the exact right thing to say, how to say it, the exact right links to share, all of that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes. The phrase, the freedom to be a human.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy phrase.
Is crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy
like
phrase.
Just let that sink in.
Yeah.
The freedom to be a human, which essentially means that in these situations, it feels like you don't get to do that.
There's a weird blurred line between like companies need to act a certain way and humans can act a certain way.
Yes.
But when you're a creator and a personality on the internet, you are like a blurred line between the two of them.
I understand the idea of like people with power using their power for good or for what they believe in or whatever. I totally understand that. And I do like think that that is really beautiful. Also, I think there is a difference between, again, like a corporation doing that and a human being. That like, I don't think it's your responsibility to have an opinion on every single thing.
It's impossible to be an expert on everything happening in the world too.
Totally.
The thing that I go to as well is like, you don't go to HGTV and expect like your Chip and Joanna to like talk about politics as they're like decorating a den for somebody.
Great point.
You know what I mean? There's like, you go to different people for different things. There are political content creators.
And like some really good, really smart people.
Yeah.
On YouTube.
And
go look them up, man. You can learn so much.
And then there's slime TikTokers. You know what I mean? Like there's such a spectrum.
I could have never guessed that was what you were going to say. True.
You don't expect for every person to be able to speak on every single thing. It's like, this is my niche, and you go to the slime TikTok to watch slime. There you go. Let's take a water break.
Please pause.
Both of us.
I like swallowed and it was game over.
I have always been hesitant to like quickly share my opinion on things. And I think it is so irresponsible to like quickly just like post something because you feel that expectation when you don't even fully understand the context of everything that's happening. I hate the way it feels to have people be like disappointed in me for not saying something quickly. I would much rather say something slowly or not at all to make sure that I'm being responsible with my platform. Like,
I love that.
It's worse to share misinformation than it is to like never say anything.
And how cool that you are interested in being educated.
And I try, and my downfall though is even when I educate myself, I'm like, I assume that there's still more I don't understand. And then I'm like, I'm still hesitant to say anything So oftentimes I don't, but that doesn't mean I don't care or am trying.
But people will always have an opinion on that.
Yeah.
That's like, that just sits there.
Yeah.
That's really tough.
The last kind of thing that I wrote down, at least to talk to with you, that I think that also could be interesting to dive into more with Jordy as well, but is how I don't really know how I want to represent Christians on the internet. And this could be interesting to talk to with you because you would in some ways be considered like an outside perspective on how Christians do share themselves on the internet. Like there's a lot of stereotypes. There's a lot of hurt that happens from Christians. I feel very strongly that I want to be a safe space to everybody watching me. And I have so many friends in my life that are not Christians, like that just have different beliefs. And like, I want that to be the same in real life as it is on my channel. Like that's something actually that's very important to me. I don't only want to be surrounded by people that have the same beliefs as me.
You're also great at that.
Thank you. But at the same time too, I'm like, I also don't want to like hide my beliefs.
Yeah.
That feels inauthentic and icky as well.
For sure.
And I feel like the way I represent Christianity currently is bad to both sides because people that aren't Christian and that don't like Christianity just know like, oh, she's a Christian, and like might try to like fill in the holes with what they think I believe. And then a comment I get often from other Christians is essentially, if you boil it down, that I'm not Christian enough, that I'm like too of this world and too lax and too much of like a,
of course,
almost performative Christian, like not biblical enough, not living by God's word enough. I got a lot of those comments when I went through a divorce. And so in some ways I feel like I'm letting both sides down, because to the people that have been really hurt by the church and Christianity, I'm like an icky Christian that like doesn't understand what they've been through. And to Christians, I'm like fake and not doing a good enough job. I hope to almost be like a different perspective for people to consider that can hopefully help them quell their hurt.
Well, again, I think it's about nuance.
Yeah.
Like instead of being like, I am this, or I am not this, or I believe this, or I don't believe this. It's like there's room to believe and disagree. I feel like so much of what we've been talking about is like the allowance to exist as a human. And that, like, I feel like if humanity is anything, it is nuanced.
Yeah.
Like we try our darndest to put people into boxes or to have like our assumptions or stereotypes or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like at the end of the day, everyone is so unique, so different. There's so much nuance in humanity.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's maybe part of what the feeling is, that it feels constricting because that nuance doesn't get to exist.
Yeah.
And this is a place that it shows up probably pretty strong.
Yeah. And honestly, I do feel like a pretty strong conviction in me that like I very much disagree with Christians that like only want to be around other Christians.
Yeah.
I not only want to be someone that like people that dislike Christians would say, oh, okay, maybe there's like a spectrum out there and, you know, maybe they're not all bad.
Yeah.
But I also care so much that like Christians that are like, I don't want to be around anybody different than me would go, oh, wait, maybe that wasn't like Jesus. Maybe Jesus spent a lot of time with people that lived differently than him. Like
probably the majority of his time.
Yeah. And like, had, you know, completely different morals than him and beliefs and lifestyles and everything. And like, maybe that was actually important for everybody involved. Yeah. Like, I like, that is a huge conviction of mine, is I want to be, I guess, an influence in that way. Yeah. I think there's a lot of Christians that are like afraid to do that. And it's a beautiful, awesome thing.
Yeah. So what does that look like? Like, what does that look like on your platform? What does that look like? How have you not been doing that maybe? And how do you want to do that?
Something I do feel like I could do better at is just talk about my faith more.
Yeah.
Hopefully in a way that isn't off-putting to people that don't believe the same as me.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't figured out.
Yeah.
I haven't figured out.
It's really tricky.
What feels right. Because it's like obviously important to me, but I really care about people feeling comfortable here.
What if you let go of the need to make people feel comfortable or be a safe place for either of these sides?
I just do want to be considerate.
I know. I mean, I feel the same way, like on the reverse.
Yeah.
I feel like living in Salt Lake,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, I grew up Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Mormon anymore.
Yeah.
Left the church. And I feel the same way in reverse. I'm like, I don't want to make all of my like Mormon coworkers or cousin, like most of my family is Mormon.
Right.
And I'm like, I hate the idea of being like a villain.
Yes.
Or them perceiving me as like, I mean, I did leave the church, so they do in fact think that like I did something wrong, and there probably is a part of them that does feel like I am bad because that is like that happens. But I have such a fear of that. And sometimes that fear holds me back from like talking about my experiences.
Yeah.
Or like saying what I actually do believe to be true or living authentically. Like I remember the first time going over to like one of my best friend's parents' house after I had gotten tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally like kept my sleeves down because I didn't want to show them because I was scared. I didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And like, that is who I am. That's where I am. That's like, this is something that felt empowering to me.
Yeah.
And felt really cool to me. And it probably does make people feel uncomfortable.
But that's not your responsibility.
It's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's not authentic to me to like coddle their feelings.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to go out and like actively tell them what I think.
Right.
But am I going to live my life?
You're not going to hide yourself either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, will I still make podcasts about what I think about it? Yeah. And if they choose to listen, will they be offended? Yes.
But they're choosing to listen at that point. You're not pushing it on them.
They're choosing to listen.
It's interesting to hear you say that because it is far easier to say what you think and feel when you think you're only surrounded by people that do believe the same as you.
Yeah, for sure.
But as soon as you're like, oh, someone around me might believe differently, that's when it gets really hard.
Yeah.
And that probably is why a lot of people feel so comfortable only surrounding themselves with people that believe identical to them.
For sure.
Whether it's politically, religiously, whatever.
Because it's hard to hold that tension.
Yeah.
It is hard to be like, oh, we like genuinely disagree on this.
Yeah.
And we can still be friends.
Because you're a human. And
yes.
that, to bring this all back, is what the internet lacks. Because you don't have that humanity of like, oh, we're different. It's a screen.
Yep.
So that's just why there's so much tension on the internet. It's because everybody does believe differently and they have different ways of life. But in person, you do feel that tension and you do have respect because you're like, oh, you're a living, breathing human with your own lived experiences, your own backstory, your own hurt, your own love, your own all of these things.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah. Well, they like talk about like it's hard to hate someone close up.
Yes.
And it truly is. It's like if you really get to know. Now, that's not true for everything.
Right.
But a lot, it's like.
It's hard. It's not impossible, but it's hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm like, and you could believe so many things differently. And like, I love you as a human, not as any of the external
Not
things.
as the quiz that got every answer right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, on a screen, that doesn't exist. I want you to align with me perfectly because holding that is really hard in general.
Yeah.
And then put you as like a successful, beautiful, happy, wonderful person. And it's like maddening if you believe something different than me. Yeah.
So true.
Okay. My last thing that I want to ask you is if you have one takeaway from this time, like one thing that you never want to forget from this, it could be like a word or a sentence or a feeling. What would you take?
I think that I want to take more control.
Oh, wow. I was not expecting that. That's so beautiful.
What were you expecting?
I don't know. I just we haven't even mentioned that word the entire episode.
No, we haven't, but I feel like it all boils down to that.
It totally does. And I love that.
Like me finally feeling like I can be goofy, me feeling like I don't have to filter myself so much, me not caring if maybe I'm not as advertiser friendly. Like all of this comes down to me taking more control. Even this is an experiment. I'm just not gonna care and see how that feels. And then maybe I'll swing the opposite way. But either way, it's me like finally feeling the freedom to take the control to try things instead of trying to feel like, okay, what's expected of me?
I read this the other day and I was like, yes. I hate how well asking myself, quote, if I had 10 times the agency I have, what would I do? Works. I hate how well that sentence works. The sentence being, if I had 10 times the agency I have, what would I do? That to me feels exactly like what you're saying. Like the control is the agency to actually choose what you want to do, what feels right to you, what like you're moving towards. And it's like every time you come to that, just being like, if I had 10 times the agency that I do right in this second, what would I do? And doing that, imagine that. That's insane.
Sounds very freeing, which is kind of the thing that I'm like trying to chase.
So freeing.
Less shackled and chained.
Yeah, because that is the saddest sentence I've ever heard. Taking back your control. I love it.
We'll see.
2025, Michel, here she is.
We'll see. I do want to say part of taking back my control, or just like caring less, the next episode I'm filming with Jordy, I'm gonna film it tipsy. Tipsy Michel's like way more unfiltered.
Oh my goodness.
Which is kind of why I want to try that experiment on the internet too, because I haven't done that before. So that to say,
this is really exciting.
I'm just trying a ton of new experiments just to see how it feels. I love what we talked about here. And there's things like in the next one, I do want to talk more about some trauma with my last relationship that I haven't really talked about that have really shaped my relationship with the internet.
Yeah.
Dating. And when I started dating Jordy, how I literally didn't want to because I knew the internet would like me less. Snark culture. I'm really scared to talk about that one.
I don't even know what that is, but I'm here for it.
That's like all the gossip forums that creators have. I'm scared to talk about that one, but we'll see. We'll see how much I say about that. All of that, we're going to dive into the next one, and I'm going to be a little more unhinged probably.
I cannot wait. We are fully tuned.
Yeah. So buckle up. Also, I never say this, but if you want to be around for New Era 2025 and you're not a subscriber, I would be really honored if you wanted to subscribe. Maybe just to watch the possible train wreck that might happen.
Yes. Press that subscribe button. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. I'll do it for you.
And also, last thing. Are you still recording the podcast that you were recording in San Diego?
Oh man, I haven't for so long, but eventually, hopefully.
But you have episodes out already.
I do.
Can you just at least say where people can find them if people want to hear more of your amazing thoughts?
Cute.
Because
I love you.
She has so much wisdom and beauty, and just like every time I talk to her, I walk away with a new, like, life-changing realization.
That is so nice.
I'm sure people want more of that from you as well. So,
sure. It's called the Inner Planet Pod, and it's that on everything: Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. It's been a while since we've posted, so don't get your hopes up.
Maybe you'll bring it back. Maybe you'll bring back 2 podcasts. Maybe one with me. I don't know.
I don't know. We're just throwing it out there. We're just throwing things out, you know?
Throwing noodles at the wall and seeing if they stay.
It's a new year. We're throwing things out.
Anything's possible.
We're experimenting, and we love that.
We're experimenting.
Ooh. Okay, like and subscribe.
I love y'all. Thank you for being here, and we'll see what happens in the next episode. And now I need to figure out how to turn off 3 cameras and whatever this software is that's just Jordy's.
Thank you, Jordy.
Thank you, Jordy. And thank you guys. And thank you, Elise.
I'm so honored.
You're
this was
so
a blast.
loved and wonderful.
Oh, I love you.
Okay,
bye.
Bye.